Orange Audubon Society's bird chat. We're glad you're here. If you're first-time visitor and in the chat, you notice there's a little chat box at the bottom. You can introduce yourself or tell us where you're coming to us from. That would be awesome. That's my bird clock saying, yeah, it's time to start bird chat. So we are going to have, let it finish. We're going to have announcements, plant of the week, a mystery bird. This week, our new feature is going to be This Week in Central Florida Birding. Actually, it's This Week in Florida Birding, because Lori went pretty far. And our program is Oakland Nature Preserve, featuring our special guest, Jackie Rawley. Upcoming programs next week is Raptors of Florida. May 13th, we're featuring the gem of the Florida State Parks, and I'm not saying that lightly, Wekiwa Springs State Park with the bird chat team. May 20th, this is our Orange Audubon monthly program, which is not on bird chat. You don't have to register. It's on our YouTube channel. And it's 150 years of wildlife conservation history by Mark Madsen. And then May 27th, we're going to kick off the summer. Summer is a cool time to bird, people. Summer birding and the June challenge with the bird chat team. Okay, we have a few spots left. If someone is local or you want to fly down, we're having beginning bird watching class. It starts Sunday. It's going to be 3 consecutive Sundays. I will be leading it along with Jeffrey Gammon, who is a hotshot young birder. Very, very good. You will enjoy that. We'll have the first meeting will be at Orlando Wetlands. The second one at Mead Gardens. The last one will be our first time doing this class at the Wildlife Drive with radios. We're really excited about it. You see us, this is the last class we did. I think it was in February and it was cold. We won't have that problem. So if you're interested, grab that email. Maybe Susan, you can put it in the chat and contact Teresa to sign up. But the deadline is tomorrow to sign up. So do it soon. And we just had one of our big fundraisers of the year, the Birdathon. And we almost have our tallies up for how many species we've seen, but it's looking pretty good. But if you'd like to donate to our Birdathon, if you go to our website and you see, I'll hold my cursor over it, see this little donate button at the top, right column, you can just donate. You can just do a flat rate if you'd like, and we would appreciate that. It'll go to our Future Nature Education Center. Oops, So speaking of Wekiwa Springs State Park, we do a monthly survey. If you're from out of state, you can be like, what? You guys are doing trips? Yeah, we have been. And we follow COVID protocols and we require social distancing and masks, but we have great time and we have limited numbers too. So where else can you see a black-bellied whistling duck and white-tailed deer? At Wekiwa Springs State Park. Do we see this all the time? No, but this was actually one of our summer ones from last year. And I've seen rosy spoonbills with deer. It's pretty cool. So if you would like to participate, it's a week from Saturday. Send me an email or put a message in the chat with your email and I'll get you signed up, and it's free and you get to see amazing stuff. Okay, and we're featuring Oakland Nature Preserve tonight. And guess what? We have one of our quarterly surveys will be on May 22nd. Also contact me to register. Will you see a chat? You never know. There were 2 chats there that were seen a few months ago. They still might be there. They've been known to breed in Florida and they're really cool. All right, I'm going to turn this over to Deborah to talk about this.
City Nature Challenge 2021. It's a competition that's been going on, I'm not sure how long, but it started in California as a competition between 2 cities, LA and San Francisco. And it goes through the California Academy of Science and National Geographic. They invented iNaturalist, the app. And so Orlando's going to do it this year, and we're competing with lots and lots of cities around the country. So in this competition, you can you put into iNaturalist whatever you see and take a picture of, any kind of plant, animal, any kind of organism that you want to enter. And what you'll do first is download iNaturalist, the app, from the App Store or Google Play onto your phone and make your account. And then you'll put in this City Nature Challenge 2021 Orlando Metro as the project that you're adding your observations to. And then starting actually tomorrow, start doing some observations, and then you'll make sure that they get uploaded to the project. And the way it works is with iNaturalist, if you don't know the name of the organism or the plant or animal, you just put it in anyway, and then other people will start proposing names, and some of them may not be correct, but eventually you'll get to a scientist or some expert on it, and you'll get the correct name. So that's the way that'll work. And I just heard about it very recently, but why not? It's just kind of fun. So maybe you'll do it. All right, I'll go on to plant of the week. And I've picked the elderberry because it's in bloom right now and actually already starting to form the fruits. And this kind of inflorescence is called a seam, a flat top seam. And notice that the leaves are dissected, compound leaves. That's distinctive even when it's not in flower or fruit. And its name is Sambucus nigra, subspecies canadensis, and it's in the family Adoxaceae, which is a new name for a family we used to call the Caprifoliaceae. Next. And its range is all through the eastern United States and even into California. And it's native and facultative wetland plant, means it mostly needs wetlands under DEP's definition. Next. And it blooms in March, and that's a good time for pollinators, and the fruit come out shortly after in the summer. And this is the catbird eating the fruits, not even ripe. Catbird is a very fruit-eating winter bird that we have. And you may have heard of elderberry wine. Well, it's not like they actually make the entire wine from elderberry berries. That would be very labor intensive, but they can use it to flavor wine. And it's high in vitamin C. All right.
Okay, so now it's time for our mystery bird. We feature a bird each week. And what you do is you just type it in the chat, and Susan is monitoring. So this is not such a great picture, but actually I'm featuring this one because I saw my first of the season last weekend, and it was singing so beautifully. So I'm going to play the song here right now up on my phone. I'm using Merlin in case you're wondering when I get to it. So let me play it. It has a really, really pretty song. And you might hear this if you go on the wildlife drive. This is where I saw it. Any guesses? Put it in the chat.
All right, we do have some guesses. Terrence says female orchard oriole.
Yes, he got the species right, but the gender not quite.
Not quite. Okay. And then we do have robin oriole, orchard oriole, orchard oriole.
Orchard oriole. So this is the orchard oriole. Yes, this is a young male. This other picture I took last year at the end of the wildlife drive. You can sometimes see them there. I haven't seen them there yet this year, but they probably are there. This is the male with his beautiful burnt orange coloring. This is the one that I photographed this past weekend, right there at the Crazy U. Those of you familiar with the wildlife drive at the Crazy U, sometimes it pays to pull off, park, and get out and look at what's around. And this was really close to the U itself, and you couldn't miss hearing him sing. And so a little bit about the orchard oriole. They're the smallest of America's orioles. Their habitat when they're here in the southeastern United States, they like open woodlands, river edges, marsh edges, and lake shores. So over there on the wildlife drive near canals is a good habitat for them. They will, if there's really good habitat, like a river edge, they'll actually nest close to other species. And what I read was interesting. The kingbirds, when they're nesting near them, will actually help the orchard oriole to ward off things like the brown-headed cowbird, which is a parasite to the orchard oriole's nest. But they're a little bit more solitary where we see them. We don't see them in big groups. They spend most of the year in Central America, and they actually have a very short nesting season, which I'll show you in a minute. They're insectivores when they're here, but they will drink nectar from flowers and hummingbird feeders. So if you have a hummingbird feeder, you might get one at your yard, possibly. And it said you could put orange slices and jelly out. Possibly you might see them, but they're not that common here. In Central America, they do feed mostly on fruit, nectar, and pollen. And right before they leave, they switch to a fruit diet. Let's see. And if you put native shrubs in your yard, which would provide insects, you might also attract these. So here's the map. It shows migration for us, but they do breed here. We do get, but they're not here very long. So I'll show you this map showing that we're getting to the high time to see them, which is May and June. And by, August and September, they're gone. So this is a great bird to go out and look for. They're just really cool. And I've never seen their nest, but they do have pouch-like nests like the Baltimore oriole has, but I think they keep them pretty well hidden. So just enjoy them when they're out and about. And that is the orchard oriole. So I'm going to turn it over to Susan. This is our newest feature this week in Florida birding.
All right, welcome everybody. So we decided to, again, since a lot of people are from different areas, we decided to kind of add a little bit of what we're seeing this week. Some of the pictures here are from Sam Mitcham. He unfortunately had to work today, so he isn't with us. But blue-winged warblers and at Mead Gardens, I think blue-winged warblers are our bird of the spring. I felt for migration because we did see more than I would expect to. Next. All right. Also from Mead Gardens is the worm-eating warbler. I don't know if anybody saw last week where the worm-eating was the mystery bird, and it talked about their flathead. This is like the perfect picture. I needed this picture for that one because it really shows how flat the head is. I did go to Fort DeSoto and saw the chestnut-sided warbler they have over there in the picnic area. So that's something else that we're seeing, just kind of fun. And next, and then Sam's little kind of roundup from Mead Gardens. If we're doing clockwise from the upper left, we have a black and white warbler, kind of having a nice, good meal with a big caterpillar, a redstart, a blue-headed vireo is in the lower right, and the blue grosbeak on the left, which are always real pretty birds to see. And next, so then Lori went up to Fort Pickens and Gulf Island National Seashore, and she saw, if we start at the upper left and go clockwise, an indigo bunting sharing with 3 of those blue-winged warblers. So they're all kind of taking a little bath and enjoying the water. A summer tanager in the upper right. Also in the water, a black-throated green. I kind of thought that was a great little picture of him, kind of all bathed up. And on the left, a rose-breasted grosbeak. And Paula's asking, is it still a good time to go to Fort DeSoto? And I would probably check eBird and see. It hasn't been as good as it has in the past years as far as quantities of birds, But there have been some different birds that people are seeing, like I saw grosbeak, we saw indigo bunting. So a little bit of things. You just have to check and see what they're seeing before you take that drive out there.
Right. But the shorebirds were fabulous.
Oh, and the shorebirds are fabulous. Yes. And they are doing a lot of mating out on that outback key, and they're doing a lot of that little dancing around. So if you got a nice zoom lens, you can get some cute pictures of them dancing around. So, and she also saw, same area, Kentucky warbler in the left. I did not get to see one of those this spring so far, hopefully. Upper right, she did catch a picture of a nighthawk flying in the middle of the day, which is kind of nice to get a good view of it. The yellow warbler with its beautiful red stripes, and an indigo bunting on that lower left. Good. And now, Kathy?
Yes, so we are going to, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, introduce Jackie Rawley, I think, and she's going to talk about her restoration work at Oakland Nature Preserve, which is one of our local birding hotspots. So I'm going to turn it over to Jackie.
Thank you. Do I do share screen now?
Yes.
Okay, wait a minute. Something's not right. Slideshow. There we go. Okay, like Kathy said, I'm with Oakland Nature Preserve. And if you don't know where that is, it's a very small preserve. We're at the southern tip of Lake Apopka in the little town of Oakland. Mostly everybody knows Winter Garden, but we're actually in the little town of Oakland. We have about 150 acres, both upland and wetland. I'll show you a map soon. Most of it is wetland along the shore of Lake Apopka. We have about 40 acres of dry sandy uplands, which is what we are restoring. I'm not going to try and restore any part of the wetlands, I'm sorry, a little too difficult. Purchased basically by grants from Florida Communities Trust, Western Beltway Mitigation. There's a couple of other funds that went into that. As Kathy said earlier, from about the 1900s early on, it was planted in citrus, which froze out in the 1980s. And then it was densely planted with slash pine, basically for the pulp industry. And I just read in the newspaper that we're losing a lot of our forests because everybody wants toilet paper. So pulp industry is for paper, cardboard, and toilet paper. Slash pine was a renewable resource for Florida, not so much anymore. Basically purchased in 2001, and it is a nonprofit owned by the town of Oakland. So here's a map. That's the Lake Apopka up here, the nice pea green lake that it is. This is our boardwalk. You can maybe see it through mostly wetlands. And then, and you can see we're basically surrounded by homes. This area up here called Hull Island was purchased 1 or 2 years ago. This is now all homes, all up in here. This, of course, and then across the street from Oakland Avenue is now all big apartment buildings and single family homes all through here. This area was what's called Briley Farm. The gentleman raised Ank cattle, the ones with the great big horns. And as a hobby, he kept zebras, a lot of African grazing animals, which you could see along the fence line here. And I understand this is now up for sale and will probably be houses in the not too distant future. this little area right here was a church. It is now going to be an elementary school. So we're surrounded, the last piece of green. For restoration, which I have been involved with, and in case you haven't figured it out, you will by the end of the program, that I am very plant centric. I tend to always look down where I'm going, and people ask me if I see birds, and it's like I never look up. So don't get to see too many, and thanks to Kathy, I am seeing more. But basically our restoration, when we talk Red Trail, where the yellow chat was cited earlier, this is our building and parking lot right here. So you can see it's a hike to get out to the Red Trail. Most of my restoration is around here in the front area. So what do I mean when I talk Sandhill Ecosystem? Basically, it's a well-drained sandy clay soils. If any of you have driven through Claremont on State Route 50 and you see those great big hills, that's all Sandhill. Basically, those were ancient sand dunes when Florida was underwater, and as the water receded, left these sand dunes. So the soil is sandy. As rolling hills, like you will see, a very good example is State Route 50 through Claremont, and very little green left there now too. Has very low organic content and very low nutrients. Any of you who have houses, especially in the villages, if you have tried to plant petunias in there, it's not going to work. We have very low organic and low nutrient. Villages is basically built on sandhill or pine flatwoods. What was? We have frequent fires. We just did a burn yesterday on about 1 acre. They did a great job. I was a little afraid the smoke was going to go over Oakland Avenue because we were up close to Oakland Avenue burning. And I went out to Oakland Avenue and couldn't even see the smoke. So my burn boss did a great job figuring out which way the winds are going to go. The trees are longleaf pine, turkey oak. There's a few other upland like Chapman or blue jack oak, which might be in there, but you have to remember what we are restoring to is sandhill, and it's going to be like this, basically a savanna with a couple of trees. Everybody sort of thinks, you know, Florida should look like the tropics. It doesn't. We have a lot of almost desert-like areas. Open grassy cover, little or no shrubs, and diverse flowering plants. We have amazing flowering plants, and it's rich in wildlife. You can see we have a skink here, and of course we have snakes. I have not seen, other than the coral, any venomous snakes. At the preserve, we see a lot of corn, coach whip, and green snakes, etc. Don't see any of the venomous, so feel free to walk around. Of course, I have signs all over the place to please stay on the trail. And one of my signs says, snakes are here. Stay on the trail. Sandhill, like I said, is dominated by fire. It's a basic environmental factor. What a lot of people don't realize, they do now in California, that if you are in a fire-prone ecosystem, you have to have controlled burns. Florida leads the nation in doing prescribed or controlled burns to pull down the amount of fuel, etc. But more importantly, from my point of view, it breaks down the organic molecules and releases nutrients into the soil. So some of the other ecosystems or habitats that we have at Oakland, giving you a pretty good diverse birding in a very small area. So we have a mesic hardwood hammock. This was Sandhill, but with the suppression of fire over the years after they took out the slash pine and stuff, it's basically oaks. And as you can see, not much grows underneath. So, but your birds like it up there. Plenty of it's oaks, palms, palmettos, giving you all of the insect activity that you need for your baby birds. And a couple, I'm starting to put in and fill in a little some more flowering trees and shrubs for the birds. Since people like Kathy get after me, what are you doing for the birds? Okay. Then, of course, we have that wonderful boardwalk through a forested wetland, otherwise known as a swamp. And that goes to the shore of Lake Apopka. Y'all missed it the whole month of April. Almost every Saturday, they had firefly walks at night. And they're starting to go down in number right now. But the whole month of April, a gentleman standing next to me out on the boardwalk a few years ago when we first started doing the firefly walk, he's looking at all the fireflies and telling me, this is better than Disney. And it's like, man, you don't get out much. But anyway, I'm not going to talk too much about birding. Again, I don't do anything other than keeping the invasive non-natives away from the boardwalk. The minute you disturb something in Florida, put a boardwalk in and you've disturbed it, non-native plants move in. Good or bad, we're not going to go into that. I understand, you know, birders, if it feeds the birds, it's not bad. But anyway, so we won't talk about that too much. All right, we talk restoration. If anybody has been to Oakland Nature Preserve lately, last couple of years, 2006, this is what we looked at like. This is the parking lot. Our big building isn't in there yet. We had a old, this thing for a little while for the office, and this is the entrance to the boardwalk. It doesn't look anything like this now, but what I would like people to appreciate if they do come for the first time or third, fourth time, everything that you see around here has been planted. That's all part of our restoration. This tree right here in the middle of the island is the only original thing. This was all slash pine before we took down the slash pines. Remember, that's toilet paper back there. Want you to know, in a slash pine farm, ain't not gonna grow too much in there. There is nothing in the understory. It looks like snow or ash, but I think it's just the color of the photography at the time. But there's nothing here. There's nothing to sustain life. There might be some birds or squirrels up in the pine trees, but I don't think there was much there. Some of the other, so 90% of these guys were taken down in the initial efforts for restoration to bring it back to Sandhill. Here's some of the other things we had to deal with. The banana farm was on there too. And this is our seepage stream back here, so it's wet. And that took years of work. So when we started around 2006, maybe a little later, this is all non-native guinea grass. It provides life for very little to nothing. I don't even think the rabbits were in there at this time. So once you take from that picture of the slash pine farm, you take that away and you don't do anything. This is what comes in instead. So these are the stumps of a lot of the slash pines from the 90% that was taken out. And this was the beginning of our Orange Trail. So We started some restoration since I've been there. So this is now the parking lot area. And you can see all of these trees, some grasses, more pine trees over here, basically oaks and longleaf pine in the parking lot area. And some muley grass. And again, so this is next time you're there, remember, everything's been planted. At the entrance to the preserve, this is the front area. It now has split log fence in here to stop people from stomping on my little baby's plants. But the person prior to me doing restoration believed you planted the trees and then you worry about the ground cover later. We have found that doesn't really work. Trees provide too much shade and your grasses won't grow. But our other problem when you don't do anything is all of these different non-natives: natal grass, Johnson grass, guinea grass, Kogan grass, bahia. Yes, I know we put bahia in our yards and that's fine, but out in the natural areas, it is considered a invasive. So this is what we had to deal with and get rid of before we could plant. So this is the process that we use, or I have used. I am lucky, unlike the red trail, I have water, access to water. There's the, where you hook up the water to. So I was able to just get everything down to plain sand, herbicide it, weed it, hand pull, whatever, take down a lot more trees and put in irrigation and then start planting. So that's the process we go through. It takes about 2 years to do whatever amount I start play with. And this is the front entrance today. Again, this is a little older photo, so we don't have the split rail fence here. But we have fringe tree, various grasses like love grasses, and my favorite photo, all of the different wildflowers. So the wildflowers, again, I'm plant centric, but even things like lopsided Indian grass for the birds. Your passion flower is host plant for 2 butterflies, so it's full of caterpillars. Garbaria provides nectar. Gopher apple is for our gopher tortoises, not necessarily, they'll eat the flowers, but they like the fruit. Some of our rare endangered ones, we are a recipient site for plant rescues that Native Plant Society does. So we are a recipient site for all of the rare endangered plants that are in the sandhill. So we take them out of construction sites where the bulldozers are coming like next week, and plant them in recipients. So Lake Louisa, parts of North Shore, Lake Apopka has recipient sites. So we have goldenrod, which I just found out is, I'll think of it in a minute, but here's blazing star. This is just a few of the flowers that you're going to find in here at various times of the year. So this is penstemon, this guy up here, that's penstemon, and it's blooming now out at the preserve. And notice, we do not have a lush green landscape. It's open and sandy. All right, so I talked about fire, and I like this couple of slides to show you. First of all, we have to hire somebody who is certified to be a burn boss, carries all the insurance and has the fire truck and all of that. So we get a briefing early in the morning, and then you stand around and wait, and you wait, and we got to wait for the wind to be just right. First of all, also, you can't light a fire before 9 a.m. It's a lot to let commuters get to work before we put smoke on the road. We don't put smoke on the road. It is rare anymore to do that. But you can see what a low intensity fire. We actually, for the burn yesterday, we did not close the preserve. We let people come in and see that, gee, this is almost, when we do enough control burns and we have it done correctly, this is all you get. It's 2-3 feet high and nothing else. And it runs right through all of those grasses. Blink and you've missed it. Just about. But you can see it's a pretty low intensity. And what we found out yesterday, oak leaves don't burn. It has to be pine needles, wiregrass, lovegrass, any of the different grasses, but not oak leaves. Down here, they don't burn. They retain too much moisture. So if you have heavy oak trees and a heavy leaf litter on the ground, you can't run a fire through it. So this is what that nice area I showed you before with all the pretty flowers. This is it after a burn. Within 2 to 3 days, I don't know how well you can see it, but this is a turkey oak and that's the new growth. But here, even better. This is wiregrass. 2 days, this says 4 days, even 2 days after a burn, there is green shoots. Within 2 weeks, palmettos are back up. And I'm starting doing a sort of a citizen science thing. Like 1 week after a burn, what flowers are up? And I found that green eyes within 3, maybe 4 weeks of a fire is up and blooming. So it's absolutely fabulous to see within 2-3 weeks, this is all green. And it doesn't even take that long. And no animals were hurt. The gopher tortoise, of course, goes down his burrow. A lot of snakes, rabbits, other insects, everybody goes down the burrow. And they're all friends until after the fire. And it's absolutely amazing. This was one of our rescues. This is another rare endangered, state endangered beargrass, I think it's called. And by the next year, it had sent up this gorgeous plume of flowers. So we talk about the red trail and the yellow-breasted chat. Anybody who's been out to the red trail doesn't look anything like this, but this is what we started with out there. This is 11 acres that had nothing. It used to be sand pines that were logged, and then nothing was done for a while. So these are all non-native invasive grasses and other kinds of weeds. There may have been birds in there. I don't know. We burned that in 2020, and down here by a month after the fire, this is what it looked like, and no trees. Maybe 3 trees. 3 longleaf pines may have bit the dust. And of course, if you go on the Oakland Nature Preserve Facebook page, they have all the critter cam photos on there. So we get all kinds of wildlife. Remember, this is maybe 150 acres. We're not talking a large property. And this is on the red trail. We think the male hangs out on the red trail, the female hangs out in the front. But lately we're starting to, the camera's picking up kittens playing out here on the red trail. So not just birds. Blue trail, if you go out there, this was one of the last areas I attacked. So this is all guinea grass. And when the guy came to mow, he mowed the trail, but you would lose small children in here and it wouldn't support any kind of wildlife because as a non-native grass, nothing is really eating it or using it. Certainly the gopher tortoise isn't. And this is just another view of, as I started to take out some of the guinea grass. And this 2020 after restoration. Remember, it takes me about 2 years to start with this to get to this. So these are blazing star in bloom. And this is another wildflower in bloom and all of the grasses. And of course, we're starting to see the butterflies. come in on the, let me see, that's on Florida paintbrush. So you act at some points of the year, you walk these trails and you're swimming through the butterflies. You have to push them out of the way. There's so many of them. When I was there yesterday burning, I looked up and it was nothing but tiger swallowtails everywhere. And I found it weird, but anyway. So I showed you earlier photos of the Orange Trail. After all, now this is 10% of these are still slash pine. They're still the wrong pine tree, but it is a pine tree. So, and I don't have money to take them all out. So this is the Orange Trail. And this is what, oops, sorry, didn't mean to do that. And again, this is very similar to the Blue Trail with all of the wildflowers and the grasses. And we've burned this area twice now, every 3 years. So you can see the burn marks. So this is basically, and at this point, I didn't know what else would interest birders. So since I'm plant centric, here are the various grasses that provide seeds. And these broom sedges, I have some, my husband's cousins up in Georgia, and he's trying to restore cow pasture for quail. So he's putting in broom sedges because when the inflorescence gets heavy and falls over, then the quail can eat the seeds. So these are all the grasses and trees. Of course, we have the elderberry that you saw. Now, a lot of these, the maple, the ash, the dahoon, sweet bay, are all along the boardwalk in the wetland area. And your dahoon and sweet bay are for the swallowtails. Mulberry was planted. I gorge on the berries last month, and a few left this month. I leave the ones at the top for the birds, and I get the ones on the bottom. But oaks and the various pines, and we know from Doug Tallamy, your oaks and your cherry laurels are your best producing insects for your birds. Those were there before restoration, basically in the wetland area. And what I've put in are, again, more like the haw producing berries. Hope my husband gets that. Thank you. And then this only begins to be a short list of the various wildflowers that go in that will give us a constant tapestry of gorgeous stuff in bloom. Basically, the fall is the best time to see our wildflowers in bloom, your liatris, goldenrod, all of those. So, any questions?
Jackie, can we hold the questions to the end? Is that okay?
That's fine. Well,
Okay.
basically, I'm done.
Yeah, okay. So we're going to turn it over now. If you could stop sharing your screen. We have another special guest. It's his first time on the chat, and that's Alan Shapiro, who's a new transplant from the Gainesville area, and he's come to love Oakland Nature Preserve, and he's been going out there a lot. And he's got some beautiful bird photos and information about the birds at the garden area and the boardwalk. So Alan, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Let's see. Slideshow. So I'm going to walk you through the preserve kind of as you arrive as a visitor. You're going to park in that parking lot, which you saw, and then you probably will wander over to this beautiful, looks like an old log cabin, but I guess it's a fairly new building. And
2008, 2010.
Yeah,
Yes.
very well done. I particularly like that there's rockers on the back porch where you can look out on some of the restored area. And inside is a museum, which is a fun place to take kids because it's very hands-on. They can hold a turtle shell. And then right here, they have aquariums with fish and frogs and all kinds of things that kids love. And best of all, of course, there's a bathroom. So right nearby is a little native garden. And they have planted a lot of things that attract hummingbirds and other birds. So you've got plants like the firebush and Mimosa stridulosa, this little ground cover up here on the top, which is a great plant for your yard if you've never tried it. Thousands of these little pink flowers. And then of course, hummingbirds really love the red honeysuckle, Lonicera sempervirens. And after you have gone through this very diverse area with all sorts of different native plants, you also have some feeders right up near the building. And the painted buntings, I've seen them in a lot of different places at the Oakland Nature Preserve, but one of the best places to see them, particularly during the winter, is right up near the building on those feeders. So make sure that when you're up at the building and looking over the railing, you keep your binoculars on the feeders and look for the painted buntings. Something else I've discovered is that they really seem to be attracted to this flower, which is a plant that most people think of as a terrible weed, but it's a great native. It's Biden's Alba. You just don't really want to plant it in your yard unless you have a yard that looks like a prairie. But I've seen them on that. I don't know if they're eating the flowers, the seeds, or the bugs that are on the flowers, but they seem to have a relationship with that. So if you ever see an area with a lot of Bidens in it, that's a good place to try to spot the painted buntings. So you come to the entrance to the boardwalk, and it seems to me that they divided it up into 4 quarters because you'll stroll for a few hundred yards and you'll come to another pavilion. So if you get stuck out in the rain, you can always run toward one of these pavilions. And there's some great signage, and there's pictures that show you what kind of plants you're going to see, what kind of animals you may see, what kind of birds you may see. And the first thing that you'll notice when you get to the parking lot is there's lots of birds calling, especially if you go in the morning. Now, I've been there twice in the past week, coming in at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and you'll hear lots of birds as you start meandering down the boardwalk. One of the loudest, of course, is the great crested flycatcher, which recently arrived here in town. And they're a somewhat larger bird, and their call to me sounds like a coach's whistle. So if you ever had Jim and you remember that whistle that the coach would blow, they sound just like that. And at this part of the path, there are some larger trees. There's Magnolia Virginiana blooming right now. And you'll see there's lots of plantings of the beautyberry, Calicarpa americana. I don't know if those were there or if they were planted by Jackie, but she did a great job on stocking this with things that birds really love to eat. And then another thing that you'll hear all over the park is the calls of the different woodpeckers. And particularly up there at the front and also in what they call the hammock loop. So you'll have your downy woodpecker, your pileated woodpecker, and the red-bellied woodpeckers. Now there are many dead trees along the boardwalk. And if you look in those dead trees, you'll see the holes that the woodpeckers have made. And there's many that they're using for nesting. I saw several holes where red-bellied woodpeckers had just their little heads sticking out. It was very cute. Now you'll also encounter at different times of the year, maybe some here now, I don't know, but northern flicker you should keep your eye out for, particularly in the winter, and yellow-bellied sapsucker. But what you have a lot of on the first part of the boardwalk, because there's so much brush, is two little, well, this skulky bird on the left, the gray catbird, you'll hear them right now singing this time of year, and they have a lot of different songs that they make. And of course, they make that little meow sound that sounds like a cat. Meow. I'm not good at imitating it. And then the northern cardinals, they'll also be in the brush, but they'll also be up higher in the tree. Sometimes you'll see a gray catbird up higher in the tree as well. And the catbird loves berries. I've seen them just gobbling down berries like crazy. And there's tons of them there. I would say easily 20 catbirds from the beginning of the boardwalk on at least maybe halfway down. And the reason that all these birds are there is there's so much stuff to eat. I don't know how much of it was there naturally, how much Jackie planted, but there are holly trees and some of them are pretty darn big. And, they have red berries that a lot of different birds eat. And then the blackberries, talking about munching on mulberries, I was eating blackberries all up and down the boardwalk when I walked there. There's a few that are already turning black. They're still a little tart, but how nice to be able to browse and eat while you're looking for birds. And this is the elderberry here. And like Jackie said, there's a lot that are flowering, but there's also some that are already going to making their berries. So the berries start green, then they'll turn black. A lot of different things eat them. So we also have grapes all over the place. The wild grapes are flowering right now. Cabbage palm berries are very popular for robins and cedar waxwings. And now I didn't really know that there were mulberries. I'm gonna have to try to find the mulberry tree so I can get some mulberries to eat.
I don't share their location. They're mine.
Okay. Now I got very lucky that when I was there the other day, I happened to see a bird fly across the boardwalk. And if you're a good birder, you watch where they land. And sure enough, it was a black-throated blue warbler. And the black-throated blue warbler has a really pretty call. Let me play it for you. So if you hear that, be on the lookout for the black-throated blue. Here's another version of it. So it's a ascending trill. So it could be a three-note call, or it could be this 5 or 6, 7 note call. Now you could see it most anywhere. We just happen to see it along the boardwalk, but I'm sure you could see it elsewhere in the park as well. There are a lot of other warblers that are in that area. The American redstart, of course, the male has the orange color to it. The immature and females will be the yellow color. And they're just so fun to watch. They hardly sit still. They just flutter around, picking up bugs left and right. A lot of birds, I don't see them at first, I hear them. So you really got to train your ears. The northern parula has a very distinctive song. And if you hear the song, it's one of those birds that you can easily get to come to you by pitching or playing its call. Sometimes they'll land right close to you. And if you're with children, this is a great bird to get them excited about birds with. And I love black and white warblers. Of course, their song sounds sort of like a rusty wheel. And you always see them going up and down, lots of times on oak trees and larger deciduous trees. They'll be even facing down, kind of like nuthatches, or upside down. Right now they're in their breeding plumage. So after you've gone a little ways, you come to a concrete sidewalk. And at this point, you're gonna have to decide whether you wanna go all the way out to the lake, which you saw was 3/4 of a mile, or if you wanna just take the hammock loop. And the hammock loop will go to the right. And now you can see that there's live oaks and other large trees. And that's where you're most apt to see your titmice and your blue-gray gnatcatchers, your cardinals, more cardinals, blue jays. And another nice thing is that they have this beautiful bird blind there. And you can just sit, and there are some feeders out there. I don't know how much they fill those feeders, but you can just sit there if you don't want to walk all the way out to the lake, and you can watch for birds, maybe play some calls and try to attract them in. A little bit to the east of this, there are some bird feeders set up. And again, there's a bench where you can sit and watch the bird feeders. And while I was sitting there, cardinals, blue jays, woodpeckers were flying in. So other birds that you might find in that area, although you may not see the white-eyed vireo, of course, you're going to hear its distinctive call. And the ruby-crowned kinglet, if you pish at all, that's one of the first birds that will come in, or if you play a scold call of a titmouse, if it's anywhere nearby, you're going to get the kinglet to come in, and hopefully you'll get to see the ruby crown. Now, as you go further out, it gets wetter and wetter, and it also gets less treed. And some of the areas are just totally covered up with Peruvian primrose. There's wax myrtle. There's a lot of grape and other vines covering the shrubbery. There's birds in there, but it's kind of hard to tease them out. But if you play some calls, or if you get lucky, you're apt to see the common yellowthroat, and they are singing this time of year. And of course, the Carolina wren is a big mouth that you'll always be able to find because they're singing like crazy. And it's really fun to get the common yellowthroats to come. You know, they have that call that goes sort of witchity, witchity, witchity. So the further you go out, you start encountering more of the wetland plants, Pontederia, Sagittaria, and that plant on the right, I think we should start calling it the COVID plant. That's the buttonbush. Looks a lot like the COVID. And finally, you're going to come to the end after passing several pavilions. You'll come to the last pavilion, which is out on Lake Apopka. And if you're tired, you can just sit there and watch nature swim or fly by. You have all the usual suspects, your cormorants, your anhingas. If you have good binoculars, you can look over onto this shoreline and you'll see great egrets, great blue herons. Another bird that I haven't seen, but I heard the other day was the limpkin. You can hear them from a mile away. And the most common bird out the end there are the bow-tailed grackles and the red-winged blackbirds. And they're just all over the place, singing and making their crazy little noises. Now, I got very lucky that I found a least bittern out there. So if you go out there in the next day or two, look to the left and down in the cattails, and you might spot this least bittern. Of course, the great blue heron was close by as well. And when you're looking at that far shore, there aren't a lot of ducks left on Lake Apopka, but the wood ducks are there. And we were lucky enough that we saw 3 wood ducks just sitting in those rockers. And there's our limpkin. So the other thing that you're going to see, of course, red-shouldered hawks are flying all around. You may get lucky and see a red-tailed hawk. A bald eagle flew by as I was sitting there, and there's lots of osprey. Sometimes you can see like 5, 6, or 7 as you look out at the lake all at the same time. So if you haven't been there, I would strongly advise you go take a trip, and you can see a lot of birds along the boardwalk, particularly in the winter and early spring, but there's still quite a bit out there now. And that's it.
Okay, and let me pull up. We have just a little bit more. We know we're running a little over, so we hope that you can hang with us for a few minutes. And I'm going to just go over the red trail and then the mesic hardwood hammock just briefly. And I wanted to mention, besides birds, I've seen other, well, Jackie mentioned other animals. Usually on the boardwalk, you can see the green enolas, which are the native Florida lizards, and often alligators. Sometimes the young alligators are hanging around. They're always fun to see.
Raccoon tracks too.
Oh yeah, yep. Let me see. Oh, come on. This is an overlook of the red trail, which Jackie showed you, which in the fall and winter is really, really good for sparrows. But it's also very good for bluebirds. If you're a bluebird fan, definitely check out the red trail. There's nest boxes there. And this is a great picture. These are from Sam Mitcham of the bluebirds eating beautyberry, which is planted out there. And This is a great place if you want to see a grasshopper sparrow. Now, this is the migratory grasshopper sparrow, not the very endangered Florida grasshopper sparrows, which don't live here. But you won't see those now because they've left. But the bluebirds you'll see. So it's a great time to go out there. Over here this winter, over in the mesic hardwood hammock, was a great place for thrushes. And probably now, no, I haven't birded there in a few weeks. You might see some of our migratory thrushes. The hermit thrush wintered here. It's probably gone now, but it was a great place to see one. That's just my bird clock again. There's some snags out there in the middle of the red trail, and often you get different birds of prey. In the winter, the kestrels. Maybe we'll be lucky and we'll have the Florida subspecies there this summer. We'll see. Field sparrows, that's another kind of hard sparrow to find, but they were pretty consistent out there on the red trail. And of course, the yellow-breasted chat, which probably drove Jackie nuts, because once people found out it was there, all the birders come looking for it. We got lucky. Deborah was the one that spotted it one day when we were out there. Usually you might hear its call. And they've been known to breed here, so they still might be hanging out, but you just have to get lucky to see one of those. And that's where we're going to leave it. I'm going to go back here. Susan is going to read off some questions. If you have questions, if you want to hang out, we'll answer those for you at this time.
All right. Actually, Jackie, Linda Hunt had a question. So when you have a burn of the size you showed in the presentation, how many minutes, hours, and days does the grass and such burn?
Wiregrass will go, if you blink, you've missed it. Most of the grasses are bunch grasses, so they go up very quickly. You have to watch. That fire will go through 1 acre of well-maintained wiregrass, etc. Under an hour. And let's say for the 1 acre we burned Wednesday, we started about 9:30, 10 o'clock for the winds to be just right. We were finished with mopping up, putting out any small fires by lunchtime. It goes, well, I only do 1 acre. When you do 4,000 acres, which they just did up at North Shore, Lake Apopka on Tuesday, that can take a little bit longer, but basically it does not take long. I sort of equate a burn to like a war. You stand around, you're bored out of your mind for hours, and then suddenly when they start shooting at you or we light the fires off, it's moments of abject terror watching it go through. But it's a lot of standing around. And because we're in an urban area, all the fires have to be put out before the team can leave. If you're burning 4,000 acres at the North Shore, they're only required to make sure everything's out about 20 feet in on the perimeters and let the interior burn. We cannot do that in an urban area. Everything has to be put out. So we all get out the hoses and the big jugs of water, and any little trees still downed limbs still burning, we have to put them out. I was home by 2 o'clock Wednesday. So it doesn't take long.
Now, we have another question. Did you plant all the grasses, wildflowers, and fern, bracken fern? Or what came in? Did anything come in on its own?
Mostly non-natives come in, like the Peruvian primrose willow that Helen talked about. No, everything, well, we do get seeds, so after a few years, stuff starts reseeding. But yes, all the wildflowers, because that had been citrus and agriculture with a lot of herbicides and pesticides and fertilizers used, the soil was basically, there was no nutrient left in the soil, which is a nutrient poor soil to begin with. So everything has to be brought in and planted Now, trees like your laurel oaks and your cherry laurels, birds will poop the seeds out. And most of the beautyberry in there have been planted by birds. Sometimes I curse the birds for where they're pooping stuff, but especially if it's a non-native like the balsam apple, balsam pear, they've learned to eat the seeds and it becomes a problem. But basically either the birds have planted it or I have, or it's self-recruited.
Okay. Terrence Skelton wanted to know, is enolas Segre still in Florida? He studied them when he was studying in Miami. One of his professors was working on that.
I'm going to guess that's a plant.
Anolis Segrei.
That's
Maybe
the
it's the anole. Could it be the anole?
Anal, that the little.
You know, we're starting to see with restoration, we're starting to see more and more of the green anoles, our native anole, more and more often. Your Cuban brown are basically in more urban areas, and around the building, there'll be the brown anole, but as you get out, we get more of the green anoles. They're coming back slowly.
Nice.
And just another metric, at the last gopher tortoise survey that we did after a lot of the burning that we did in 2020, we have about 180 burrows in less than 40 acres, which is a little overcrowded. But that's a keystone species, and basically our restoration is for the gopher tortoise. 17 were brought in. We were a recipient site in the early days, and 17 were brought in to where there had been none, and now we're up to about 180 burrows. So maybe a few less tortoises, but basically 180 active burrows. So we're doing something right. And with all those birds, I just wish I'd called you guys in sooner before we started a lot of the restoration, because it's a great metric, you know, are we doing something right? And so keep coming out, keep counting those guys, because that makes us feel good. We're doing something right. And yes, there's a lot of the woodpeckers because I'm killing those pine trees that don't belong there. So they love the dead pine trees. And along the boardwalk, I did not plant anything. That was originally there as a forested wetland. That was what was there. And Alan, your mulberries are on just the other side of that bird blind.
Oh, okay.
Where we have chains up and you can't go in there. I'm still restoring that area. I'd be happy to know if we actually do see some birds at the bird blind. I'm still trying to get the right plants to grow.
Can I interrupt? You know what you need is water. It's not, you have plenty of plants. You need water. Every good bird blind I've ever seen has had some kind of moving water. The birds love it.
All right, we'll talk to Birds Unlimited, who is one of our sponsors now, and keep all the bird feeders filled that you saw. We had to take a lot of the bird feeders down in early 2020 because we had a bear who was living on the property and bringing in trash from the neighboring neighbors, but we had to remove, and some of them just haven't been refilled. We didn't get around to it yet. And I think there's been another bear sighted in Winter Garden. So maybe we'll have another bear. But I'll talk to Birds Unlimited and see if they want to bring in some kind of solar water feature. Okay, good.
You become like a little Fort DeSoto, because that's where all the birds come, is the fountain.
The water fountain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does it have to be moving water? Can I just put a bird bath out there?
Moving is better.
Best if it moved.
Yeah, that's what I thought. We'll work on it.
And Jackie, if people are local and they want to volunteer with you, how would they do that?
Go on the website, oaklandnaturepreserve.org, and you can sign up. And Nicole O'Brien is our outreach coordinator. Due to COVID, we're limiting the number of volunteers coming in large groups coming out. But that should be lessening soon. I'm usually there on Mondays, working weeding. Restoration is almost nothing but weeding. But she does take other volunteers on Saturdays. But again, our numbers are limited for the moment. But check out the website. And do check out the Facebook page for all the critter cams. Tons of coyotes.
And the fireflies, I went my first time, I guess it was early April.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing. I didn't know there was anywhere in Florida that still had that. So next year you guys should go out when they have those special nights.
Definitely.
Light pollution is why we don't have them in urban areas anymore. Of course, pesticides. And people clean up their backyards, take out all the dead wood and debris out of their yards. The larval form of the firefly is a meat eater, and he likes to eat the other grubs that are in the dead wood. So you clean up your yard, no fireflies. But basically it's light pollution from all the street lights and house lights.
Very good.
Thank you, Jackie. That was super. And thanks, Alan. Yours was great too.
Yes, I loved all those photos. I wanted to jump in a few times, but thank you. That makes me feel so much better that all that life is there. I had no idea. Like I said, I got to look up occasionally.
I can send you photos that were taken there if you want them.
Yeah, I wouldn't know what to do